The graphical interface is usually one of the last things you think of when you are developing a game. At least for me it is. So in this video I will take care of the interface of the raycasting game I have been developing here on the channel, Dead End. We will start with a splash screen, which is nothing more than displaying an image as soon as the game starts. And I want this screen to stay on until the player presses any key, so I will create a loop just for that. Here I'm going to set the frame rate at 60 FPS. I will make a copy of the splash image and get the time value to render an animated text. But to render the text, I first need to configure the font. This is made at the beginning. I'm rendering the text twice to give a shadow effect, and I'm also varying the vertical position with the sign of the time, so it goes up and down with a small phase difference. I will get the mouse position and render a polygon for the pointer. And finally display the resulting image on the screen. After all this, I checked if the player did press any button to break out of the splash screen. Only then it goes to a pause menu, from where the player can choose to start the game or change the settings. So before running all the logic for rendering the frame, moving the player and the NPCs, I will check if the game is paused, which can be done with the P and S keys, and it is activated automatically when the player dies. The pause menu has three different screens. In the first, the main menu, the player can leave the menu or go to the other screens. The second screen has the configuration options, and the third is just an informative screen. For simplicity, I'm using pre-rendered PNGs with semi-transparent backgrounds. Pygame doesn't have any integrated button solution, so you have to do everything manually. In short, for each button it is necessary to check if the pointer is inside their corresponding region and also check if there was a click to perform the necessary actions. I have put most of the pause menu logic in a dedicated function to keep the main loop a bit cleaner. Each screen is controlled by the options variable. When equal to 0, the main menu will be rendered. Here I check for each one of the menu buttons if the mouse pointer is hovering any of them, comparing with the coordinates of a rectangle around the button. If it is in that region, I render a rectangle with the same size to highlight the button. Some information has to be rendered after the menu image, like texts and shapes, but the highlight of the buttons is drawn before, because it is in the background. And only after that I check for the click to execute the action. The process is almost the same for the other screens, only with different buttons. The most interesting buttons are the volume controls. For this, a triangle is drawn with the polygon function that has proportional size to the volume, and the new volume is calculated based on the position where the player has clicked. At the end, again, a polygon is drawn at the pointer's location. I opted to adjust the resolution in the main loop, because I didn't want to pass all the parameters to the pause menu function. I also made a dedicated function for that and for the volume adjustment. One thing that I think is somewhat important is to add a small timer after each click to avoid double clicks. Let's go to the game's heads-up display. While the player is playing, I will display only two informations directly on the game screen: the player's health and if the maze exit is accessible. To display the health, I created a PNG image with 10 Hz, but I will only render an amount proportional to the player's health. So after importing the image, I will create a partial copy of it, using the subsurfaces function. Every time there's a change in the player's health, I need to update this subsurface. And for the exit, the idea is very similar. I created this image here with a regular exit symbol and another one with a forbidden sign over it. And I will also use subsurfaces. While the player has not killed the minimum number of enemies and it is not safe, I will display the version with the forbidden sign. I will render these subsurfaces after rendering the sprites and before sending the frame to the screen, so they will always be in the front plane. I could still add elements like enemies' health, but I prefer to have a cleaner screen. I made some change to the game logic. Now it has a crude level system, where the map size and the amount of enemies increases as the player advances. If he dies, he goes back to level 0. But I'm not really satisfied with it. In general, the game is still very repetitive. So in a future video I want to give some thought on level design. Maybe I will add something like a story mode. I also made some improvements to the graphics. Firstly, I added a second level of blocks for some walls. So now there are houses and buildings. What's happening here is that I keep the distance from the bottom wall and keep on with the ray until I find the top wall or reach the ray limit. So first I draw the upper wall and then the lower wall, because the lower wall may hide part of the upper wall. And to make things more interesting, I added textures of doors and windows, taking advantage of the fact that each block of wall has 9 regions of textures, using the central region for windows and the top part of doors, and the lower central region for the bottom of doors. And a more subtle detail, I made a blurred version of the brick texture, to use it in the more distant walls, so it reduces the appearance of artifacts due to downsampling. This technique is similar to MIP mapping. Now I feel comfortable to make the game available on itch.io for download, so if you only wanna try it out, you can get it there. But if you wanna take a look at the code, it is all available on my GitHub. And if you didn't watch the previous episodes of this series yet, there's a link with a playlist in the description. If you want to support these kinds of videos, you know what to do. Anyway, thanks for watching and I see you in the next video.
Yeah.